Hey everyone, my name is Eugene Lee, and I am here today's VidTalks, to share more about creator platforms and the funds that are fueling this ecosystem. So I'm glad to have everyone here, and joining us is Neil Robertson from Influence.co. And this all originated from a blog that he had written talking about the various funds, like the YouTube Shorts Fund, the TikTok Creator Fund, the Snap Fund, all meant to lure creators, keep them engaged, and keep them paid. So that's what we want to discuss today. And so for the next half hour, actually the next 25 minutes, we're going to discuss that. We're going to discuss, do these funds help or hurt? And then also, too, should creators be thinking of other things outside just these funds in itself? So with that said, look forward to bring Neil on stage and excited to have him aboard today.
Hey, Gene, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil, before we get started, maybe you could just quickly introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, what Influence.co is, and then let's dive into it.
Sure. So I'm a multi-time entrepreneur. I basically have spent my whole life building software startup companies. I've always been fascinated by kind of anything that's the cutting edge of marketing. So I spent a lot of time in the affiliate world, kind of the last 10 years of my life. And then I started to see all this incredible social selling that was going on Instagram. I actually witnessed it from the fitness sector first, where these fitness influencers were creating 90-day workout guides and selling them as PDFs and things like that and making a killing. So I actually found a fitness influencer in LA and reached out to her and said, hey, do you want to make one of these guys just to see how it goes? And we did. We rented a white room and took a bunch of photos and made this beautiful 135-page guide, put it online, and she sold it. She had 30,000 followers, which was back then, and we made like $16,000 off of it. And I was like, wow, there's something here. So this was, 5 or 6 years ago. So I started to get the idea for Influence.co. And what I saw is that all these influencers and creators were really trying to figure out the landscape, how to turn being an influencer or creator into a profession. And there wasn't really anywhere for them to go because none of that conversation was happening on LinkedIn. So we built Influence.co to be the modern professional network for influencers and creators. We have about 300,000 people on the platform now. And they basically come there to learn stuff, to meet other people, because it's kind of a solo journey as a creator, especially in the pandemic. And we have various ways for them to make money as well. So that's what I spend my time and energy on, is just really helping anybody that wants to be successful as a creator.
Well, that's very cool. I love it. I think creators need as many resources as possible. So having a third-party outside source to be able to share this is, and also in a packaged way, I think is super helpful for not only creators but the space. And we could use as much of that as possible. Let's dive into directly into the meat of this. When we're here to talk about creator funds. This stems from your issue number, I think it's 10. Yeah, issue number 10. And just so for folks who are unaware of what I'm talking about, I'm not sure if I can put this in the chat, but it's called your Substack is called Creatorscape, and I believe you cover the ecosystem. And the origination for today's topic stems from creator funds. Tell us a little bit about where this thought came from, how this originated, and your perspective of the different funds that we see, and then maybe we can also break down to the audience the different funds that we're aware of today.
Sure. So the progression was, my co-founder Ryan and I were amazed at how many companies there were that building products for creators. And so we made this thing called the Creatorscape, which was just this sort of visual diagram of, I think, 270 companies that were doing so. So companies like Patreon and Luma and things you've probably heard of. And we started that project last year. This year, we realized that the major platforms had started to build a lot of their own products themselves. So Facebook has a tipping product. They actually have a live events product. Obviously, YouTube has monetization products. And so we built this collection of all that data in one place. And one of the things that jumped out at us, we found out there's 54 different products across the major platforms that creators could use to monetize, which is fascinating how many there are.
Wow. 54.
But there was this incredible 54. I mean, and some products you'd never think of. I was shocked to find out that Facebook has a product that helps you sell live tickets to live events. I never knew they had that product.
Yeah.
And so as we started to kind of map this out across all the major companies, we saw these funds just popping out at us. Like they were just these sort of really interesting, unique things that, sort of, it seemed like every single week another platform would announce one. So most recently you heard of the YouTube Shorts Fund, but there's of course like the Snapchat Fund. Facebook has a fund for Black creators. Instagram just implied that they're going to launch a fund soon. TikTok was sort of the first one with their like $1 billion fund that they announced. And these things are like sprouting up. Even Pinterest has a fund now. Substack has a fund. Linktree just announced a fund, their passion fund. It seems like every single day a new one pops up. So I think the piece that you're referring to, my co-founder Ryan and I, we just sort of started to drill in mentally to like what this really meant for the future of creators and for platforms when all of this sort of money was available to them. And I'm sure we'll talk about this, but it's a really interesting combination of both evolving a lot of these platforms' historical way of paying people, which was through revenue share, CPMs, which, people complain about a lot as having kind of dropped hugely. It's a way to kind of like reinvigorate the way that they, or reimagine the way that they share revenue. But also it's a bigger indicator of this huge battle for talent that's going on right now, where the platforms are really openly saying, we are nothing without our creators. So let's put a lot of money, not just lip service, but a lot of money behind getting the best creators really making content native to our platform.
Let me ask you a question on that, Neil. You're absolutely right. These are platforms who are vying for creator attention. They want the best of breed content, and they're throwing dollars at it, which makes a lot of sense. But is this just a bridge between what they should all be doing and having a partnership program, a formal partnership program like a YouTube or like Twitch affiliates, where there actually are sharing meaningful revenue back to the creators, rather than announcing maybe this, I don't know, is it a marketing ploy? Or they're just saying, hey, we're going to put a lot of zeros behind this and just say, hey, let's, this is PR this, so it reminds people who we are and why they should create content for us.
So I think that's a really fascinating question. And I'll say, like, across the different companies, the funds are being used for very different things, and they've actually been met with very different reactions. So let me give you a couple contrasts, right? So you've got Snap's fund, which is really meant to bring attention to their Spotlight product, which is kind of their TikTok competitor. And they kind of put up a flashy $1 million a day number that they were handing out. And they got a lot of great PR marketing around people that have successfully pulled money out of that. And I think Snapchat just announced they have 500 million daily active users, I think. Maybe it's monthly, but it's like some staggering number that they have. It's a huge number. And so you can take a look at that and you can say, like, was it marketing? I mean, at the end of the day, they also announced how many how many creators made money from it. I remember doing the math, and something like the average amount of money that a creator made was like $2,400. So like, this is not like life-changing money they're paying to anybody. So they've actually backed off of that now, and they pay a few $1 million a month is what they say now. So they backed off with $1 million a day. Take a look at something like Substack, for those that are kind of writing newsletters. They put out this program to essentially like lure big journalists over and to kind of front them the money, almost like a record contract, which got paid back over time. That was a very controversial program, but it turned out being very profitable for Substack, which is a much smaller company. And so for them, doing creator funds is really a way of growing their business. So I think you see like very different strategies and approaches for people that want to prop up a product like YouTube Shorts, or are really a much broader program like even TikTok's creator fund, where they're trying to get the biggest creators to come over. How long-lived are they? Part of me thinks that the platforms may end up figuring out the equation where, like in the old days when you bought stock, like for IBM or something, they would give you a dividend. So part of the earnings of the company would get paid out to everybody that held equity in the company, held equity. And I'm wondering if platform companies are starting to think about kind of creator equity now, where like if you're on their platform and you're contributing to the company, are they going to take 2%, 3%, 4% of their profits and just give it back to the people that are helping to make it?
Yeah.
I think the smart money would say, yeah, that makes sense. It's how these old school companies kept their investors very loyal, their stockholders very loyal. But the skeptical version of me thinks that there's a moment in time where this is kind of performative, and they're a little bit trying to like use their sharp elbows to keep other companies, maybe even like Patreon, who doesn't necessarily have the same money, from competing. It reminds me a little bit of like what record labels would do for early music companies, where you had to spend 30 or 40 million dollars just to kind of get into the game. They've kind of upped the ante now. So if you wanted to build the next generation like platform for creators, you might have to go find 50 or 100 million dollars to give to creators just to be even able to be taken seriously.
Got it. Let's go back to that. And by the way, that whole that creator equity, I think that's a topic in itself. I feel like that's a very deep well that we can go into, and maybe we table that for another day. But on the funds that you're aware of today, how much of them are treated as grants versus we're going to claw back? This is kind of like an advance, like you said, like a record label where we're fronting you the money and we're getting back versus from what I know, the Black Voices Fund from YouTube is basically served as grants, where there's here's a check to keep content going.
I think 95% of them are grants. I think Substack stands out as having experimented with the kind of like a payback royalties or advances, if you will. But I expect you actually see more of those, because it's working really well for them. It's profitable, and it's an easier thing for a younger company who might be wanting to get creators' attention to be able to create a program that's profitable versus just doling out $100 million.
Got it. I want to switch gears with this. If you're an early creator who's getting started, and sees an opportunity to take this as a full-time, like maybe you're a YouTube creator or who's reached maybe 10,000 subscribers, or you're a TikToker, you've gotten a certain number of followers. Should creators be looking at this as a viable way to earn, or should they be looking at this just as like, hey, if I get it, but I really need to focus on my primary income sources, the ad share, the brand sponsorships, the affiliates. And I think this will open up to the next part, which I'm going to ask you is, does this fit certain types of creators, or are there certain type of creators who shouldn't even consider this?
Yeah. So just to give some context to this answer, I've been building companies from scratch for 25 years of my life. And one of the things that you learn about building multiple companies is that no two of them can use the same tool set to get attention to grow. And no two of them can use the same mechanism like AdWords or YouTube videos or SEO or things like that to attract customers, which then end up creating revenue. And I think that one of the challenges for creators is there's sort of this double-edged sword. There's like this amazing blessing of so many places that you can go and try to make money as a creator now, so many monetization tools, but not every creator and their product, if you will, is not really apt for necessarily all of those. Some will be great for ad revenue share. Some will be wonderful for affiliate revenue. Some will be horrible for affiliate revenue. Some will be really good for building a paid membership community, or getting onto like a Cameo or a Koji and trying to sell 5-minute happy birthday videos. And I think it's really hard for creators because they're so busy just doing what they love, which is creating content, but they've got to really dedicate in a very intentional and systematic way time to try to go and test each one of those monetization channels. Because I think if there's, say, like 8 different ways that people can monetize, my guess is that 2 or 3 will really be worth the time of the creator, but you've got to try all 8. Just like a company has to try some Google AdWords and some SEO and some other things like that. So creator funds, I kind of put that in the same kind of like, grab bag as doing affiliate revenue. You should go and try to create some content, on, the Snap Spotlight program and see if you can get picked up. They're doing a really nice job. I know this about Shorts as well. They're doing a really nice job of discovering new talent with these programs. It's not just, I think people were very worried when TikTok announced a program, it would just go to really established creators, but that hasn't been the case. So it's, you're making content anyways, you might as well put it on the platforms that are willing to pay you some money up for the grants and see if you get it, because $2,400 on Snap, that's rent money for a couple of months for people.
So your positioning is, take the analogy, like I'm a college student, I'm a poor, hungry college student, I see a bunch of grants out there, and I'm just like, apply to all of them. Let's see which one picks up, because they're giving away money, why not? And test out to see if my audience fits there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think there's some logic there, right? If you are great at making long form educational content, YouTube Shorts might not be the place to start.
Right. Right.
You know, but I think you can kind of probably pick a
Yeah.
few that are.
Yeah. Well, I think also too what people are, what we're also seeing with creators are who may have done long format content are now testing out how do we reformat our type of content, our content strategy to include shorter snack size shorts or reels type content. Because what they're finding is audiences are picking up that type of content. Let's go back to the creators who are figuring this out, maybe a little bit further down the life cycle chain where they are making consistent, steady income. Maybe it's not enough, or maybe they just got to full time. In the world of startups, and you and I discussed this last week, you as a startup, there's a thing called product market fit, right? This is something that investors clamor for, and it's really hard to tell if you got it, but when you do, you got it. What's the analogy here with creators? Is a fund paying you? Is that signal product market fit, or is that just, hey, you crossed some sort of threshold, or you made the bar for that night? And so I think where I'm trying to get to is, creators who should be treating themselves as business, what should define as product market fit?
Yeah, I think for creators, there's kind of three dimensions to it, right? So for startups, it's product and market are the two dimensions. For creators, I think it's like platform, product, which is your content, and market, which is your audience. And so it's a little bit more complicated already because there's three things there. Because like you said, like you could take, educational content, something maybe like financial wellness, right? And it could just be sleepy on YouTube, but you put it on TikTok and you recut it, and there's a lot of sort of like financial influencers and creators on TikTok that are blowing up right now. So kind of that's one thing, is to figure out like what that triple works for you. The other thing, which I think is really important, is one of the challenges of product market fit is there's a lot of like false peaks. So you'll get some kind of a win, and you'll feel like, okay, great, you got a bit of product market fit, and maybe it's with like one segment of customers or one specific like feature that you made, and you climb to the top of that peak, and it's not really high enough to like warrant you spending the next 10 years of your life on. But because you've gotten to that peak, you sort of feel like you shouldn't like go backwards. And I think that can be very true for creators as well. I think creators sometimes will make a piece, especially on TikTok, it'll go viral, there'll be some interest in it, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's a long, repetitive, consistent cycle of kind of like product market audience fit. And I think that's the harder thing, but the smarter thing to look for is where you can do something similar for an ongoing period of time and get a consistent, it's always going to be bouncy, but like a consistent amount of reaction from your audience. That's when you, like you said, when you have it because it's pulling you, right? You're not pushing it, and it's that consistency that's the difference between you have it and you're trying to get it.
Yeah, I love how you said that. The differentiation is, instead of really pushing it, it's kind of you're being pulled into it. I've often heard from the creators that we work with or we pay that they said the same thing. They're now at a position where they feel their audience is pulling them in, and oftentimes they realize they have to answer to that by reformatting the content, thinking about their content schedule, their programming, and so I really like how you mentioned the differentiation. You're being pulled into it versus pushing it. No, please go ahead.
I would say one other thing that I think is really becoming clear too is that like part of having sort of like product market fit for a creator is where the audience has so much affinity to the content that's being created that they are happy to talk to each other almost as much as they're happy to engage with the influencer or creator. And so you're seeing a lot of people start to experiment with communities, right? So obviously look on Discord or different communities, and I think that that's really fascinating when you see people's audience really just want more of the subject matter, even if they can get it from other members of the audience. That's when you really have product market fit, and that's when the world gets to be really good as a creator, when that community is doing the work for you 22 hours of the day, when you're not spending your time in it.
We have a couple of questions coming in and I want to address these questions. Thank you, Jason and Tom. Please keep them coming, and I'll make sure we save time for these. But there's another topic I want to talk about, which is really interesting. It's an interesting concept, and it kind of ties into what you talked about at the beginning. There's a concept of almost like UBI, universal basic income from the platforms.
Mhm.
There's a concept of having a middle class. And it is true. We do see a stark difference between some of the very large creators that we pay and the vast majority of the creators we pay who are smaller. And there is a floating middle class, but is there responsibility by the platforms to push for that middle class? And this kind of ties into your topic, like about the dividends that companies used to invest in the 80s and 90s when securities included dividends. Should platforms be doing that? Should platforms be saying, hey, you know what? You uploaded a video, got 2 million views. That's 0.001% of the views that we generated today. You get 0.001% of the cash flow that we earned. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think what has happened with the platforms in the last 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, is that the platforms really set up to reward the winners. So we're going to give you distribution, and then if you're making, getting millions and millions of views, we're going to have the money trickle down to you. I think where the platforms struggled was really kind of like with the medium-sized creators and sort of the small creators, and some platforms it's very hard to get onto now and actually get some growth. And I think that the platforms with these 54 monetization products I talked about have realized that that system of kind of only rewarding the hits is just not that broad and egalitarian of a system, and is driving people to other platforms. And so they're starting, I think, to try to like fill in the white space of products that can help someone make $150 a month, which might be just like enough for them to want to spend the money on the camera equipment and the storage on Dropbox, or or $1,000 a month, or 10, or eventually all the way up. They're trying to, I think, like graduate the offerings. And I view this a little bit like government programs. At the end of the day, you mentioned UBI, universal basic income, and I think the idea is that, like, if the government gives you $1,000 a month, you can like pay for your rent and water and utilities and food, and so you can spend your life doing your passion. To me, I think UBI is really distribution. I think you get that for free from the platforms. They don't give it equally to everybody. You've got to like figure out how to like hack the distribution. But I think to some extent there is that base level of kind of like foundational artist grant going on, which is, YouTube has all the views it has, and TikTok has the incredible virality it has. The algorithm is that gift that you're getting. But the gap has traditionally been between that gift and, okay, great, now I'm actually making a full-time living. And this is why you're seeing this flood of companies and platform tools coming into the middle, so that it's not as a step function between, hey, you're on YouTube and you got 1 million views, but you didn't make any money, so you wander off to another platform where you might have more success.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're seeing more and more creators, first of all, come into the space. We're seeing creators who start on TikTok, build a massive following, and realize I can't make as much money on TikTok, so I better go on YouTube because it's still the house that cashes the most chips. Yet they go there, they don't get the same results as they have on TikTok. They get discouraged, and they're just like, why isn't TikTok paying? Now they go back to TikTok and start, complaining over there. But we're seeing a lot of platforms come with new funds. I was told from my team there's one for writers from even Facebook, supposedly to compete with Substack. Supposedly Twitter is going to be doing the same too as well. So we're going to start seeing some really new, interesting things this summer. Tell me one thing, and we'll turn this over to questions. Tell me one platform you're most excited about, Neil, and what do you think creators should be paying? Why should creators paying attention to this?
Well, it's a good question. I'm actually mostly interested in completely brand new platforms that bring something, a different social dynamic. So I hate to be on the paparazzi bandwagon, but I think an app that is about people doing something together is incredibly well timed as we move out of the pandemic and everybody wants to sort of stream out and get back to sort of experiential marketing. And I love, this idea of capturing authenticity, which comes better when it's captured by someone else. Hard to know with these things if they have staying power, right? Inevitably, people do like to create content on their own time about themselves when they want to. But there's been so many of these like small dynamic things that have emerged that have built these great platforms that that's definitely what I'm keeping my eyes on.
Awesome. Yeah, paparazzi. That's a really interesting take. I'm still curious to see, what goes on with Clubhouse. Clubhouse also has a fun too, and jury's still out. I don't think it's over them, and I really do hope that that materializes into something else. So with the last few remaining minutes here, there's a few questions that came in, and the audience, feel free to pipe them in, and I'm going to directly pass these on to Neil. So first question comes from Tom. Do you think you can be a successful creator and earn funds even if you have a smaller audience?
Sure. So I think, first of all, audience size, people get so starstruck by 100,000 followers, million followers, et cetera. Audience size totally depends on the category. So I was talking with someone who was saying they were really interested in learning about whiskey. And like, rather than go on Google and type in whiskey, they just went on Insta and they started just following whiskey influencers. And they got really like, deep into the world of whiskey influencers and creators and started learning about brands and started buying things that they recommended, et cetera. And I guarantee you, like the whiskey creators on those platforms had like tens of thousands of followers,
Right.
not hundreds of thousands of followers. But the commercial viability of those creators is really high. And I want to go back to my point about community, right? So sometimes a small audience means you're going to be more successful at community than a big audience. It's the natural like dynamic of humans where a small group of people intensely interested in the same thing are much more likely to connect than a large group of people loosely interested in the same thing. So you'd be amazed. I saw this statistic the other day. It said something like 80 or 90% of Discord servers are 15 people or less. It blew my mind, which means that really mostly what's happening is small groups of people are talking. So you find a really valuable niche, you get 50 people into that community and you charge, maybe it's $50, a month, that's $600 a year. That's $30,000 a year. That's a part-time or depending on where you live, full-time gig. So I wouldn't get discouraged if you have smaller audiences. The good thing about smaller audiences is they can only ever turn into bigger ones. So
I love that perspective, and you hit the nail on the head. Smaller audiences can be the most concentrated. We've run some campaigns where we identify the audience to be really, really small and niche, and it was a specific ethnic group. And what we found out, they had the highest conversions of actual sales versus a wider audience, larger subscriber following. So I can, spite out a few examples of smaller audiences that are highly concentrated, or more loyal and more likely to take an action, the creator will say. So there's also schools of thoughts about your first 1,000 audience or your core 1,000 audience. But last question here, just because I know we have a minute left. This is from Jason. Jason asked, what are the key differences between creator funds, as we were speaking about, versus paid partnerships?
Yeah, the big isn't telling you what to make. You can make anything you want. There are some exceptions. Substack, you have to like apply very specifically. But like in the broader funds like Spotlight, for example, you're in there, you're making for the format, and if you get the most engagement or whatever their metric set is, they'll give you some of the cut. Paid partnerships are a much more structured program. Someone reaches out to you, you have a conversation with them, you agree on the general type of content. Most brands aren't going to tell you what to make, but they might give you some insight, or you might give them a few options. So flip side one is do whatever you want, and if the audience loves it, you win. The other is you've got a bit more guarantee that you're going to make money, and you might have a little bit more constraint on that. Both are very worthwhile spending some time trying to do.
Absolutely. Thanks for breaking that down. Guys, we are at the last minute. I want to thank our guest today, Neil Robertson from Influence.co. Thank you for joining and sharing this. I put a link to his Substack, and just Google Creatorscape. Neil's got some great stuff on there. I just saw your other one you released over the weekend. Look forward to reading that. But yeah, and for the audience, thank you for tuning in. So for VidCon and VidTalks, I want to thank everybody, and happy June 1st.
Yeah, thanks, Eugene. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.